great to be here one more time today. And my name is Gary Fowler, and I'm the CEO, founder, and president of GSD Get Shit Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm a 17-time serial entrepreneur. I've worked on several unicorns. I was on the original management team at Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion. We love artificial intelligence and quantum computing. Today, GST has 127 companies in a portfolio from 55 countries. You have 55 from as far away as Nigeria to all the way to Vietnam, Argentina, the UK, Switzerland, Germany, Sweden, you name it. The one thing they have in common is they're incredible companies that are making their dent in the universe. With that, I've got incredible guest, Ron Lewin. Ron is a serial entrepreneur. He lived in Eastern Europe for some time, building companies. He's involved in integration. He's involved in product development, and he's all around good guy. Starting at 18, built a company called TerraLink. With that, I'd like to bring Ronnie Lewin on. Hi, Ronnie. How are you today?
Hi, Gary. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your journey. Now, what made you decide at 18 years old to start a company?
Well, I had always been a lover of technology from a young age. I got my first computer, I think, when I was 11 years old.
I've never heard anybody say a lover of technology.
I was. I really liked it. I liked to fool around with it. And already at the age of like 15, I was thinking about how to make some money using technology. And by the time I was 17, I was a partner in a small software company in Toronto, where I'm from. And by the time I was 19, I had started my own company doing system integration. And then I got involved in different projects around the world and started building the company into a large international global IT services and business consulting company. And by the time I sold the company in 2021, we had about 700 employees working in 6 offices around the world with some smaller satellite offices. And I was involved in 2 other companies doing things such as drones.
Now, when you're doing that, when you got started with those companies, what about how did you deal with the downs and how did you deal with the ups?
Well, you kind of take it day by day, first of all. So you got to make sure, my slogan in the company from the start was problem solvers. And that was about how we dealt with our customers, that we helped solve their problems and we helped them to achieve breakthroughs. But problem solvers was also an internal thing. It was also about how you work day by day. And when a problem comes up, you mitigate it, you figure out a solution, you deal with it. And that's about how to deal with the downs. And how to deal with the ups, well, that's a question of having a strategic plan that helps you to understand helps you to plan for what you understand, what your intuition says is coming based on experience, knowledge, and vision. And so you build a strategic plan and then you execute it. And of course, you pivot when necessary. When you see things changing, when something looks better, when you see an opportunity out there that you uh, didn't expect coming and you realize it's a good opportunity, you take it and you sit down and you go day by day and you GSD.
Well, there's words from my own heart. I understand those get shit done words. So, what happens when you're going down through and the market changes and you've got to scale back in terms of the employees? And then how does it work when you need to scale up? How do you deal with that? And how do you manage that as a company, as a startup?
Um, well, it's important to be honest with people and to be fair with people. So when things scale down, and sometimes you have to let people go, and that's it's unfair for everybody. It's unfair for the employees. It's sucks for you as an owner when you hired people and you put energy into hiring people because you believe that they're the right people and that you need that for your execution your strategy and developing your business, and then you have to let them go. And it's also necessary because you have to do that to be fair to the other people who are still in the company, because you're responsible for helping ensure the success of those people who are remaining in the company, and those people who have to perform and get things done themselves. And so, um, doing that, you have to sit down with people, and if you're usually, and there are exceptions, but usually when you are reasonable with people, uh, and you are honest and open with people, and you're not unfair to them, and unfortunately, being very often being fair costs money. Um, you It works out okay. And yeah, you have to spend money, and that's an unfortunate part of being in business. But usually that comes back if you are fair to people. Usually it works out. And yeah, there are cases where people are not going to be reasonable, and maybe people are going to think that you are unfair when you think you are fair, and that happens, and it's sucks when it happens. But there are usually not great ways of dealing with that situation. You just have to kind of slog through it and try to find a good solution. Sometimes you can, for example, agree to find a third party who will mediate in such a situation, etc. And the other part of your question, so that was the downside. The upside part of the question is, how do you deal with growth? And that's about building the team and having the right strategy and having the resources to execute that strategy. So, finding the right people means that you have to have, if you're that small, you have to have a network of people that you can trust, that you can use to find other people that you can bring into your team, and build partnerships with, and bring in as employees. When you get to the right size, maybe you have HR manager, and then you really rely on an HR manager. And in TerraLink, the largest company I built, we had a great HR manager, and she put together a great team. Hi, Julia, if you're watching this. Um, and then having the right plans. So that's the function of business planning, and having some consultants, people like yourself who work with companies and help them understand how to build their company and how to execute the strategy. And then finally, it's a matter of having the resources. And that's an issue of going out and working with investors and venture capitalists and banks and other more traditional sources of funding to bring in the resources, which is usually finance, but there can be lots of other types of resources that you build through partnerships, for example, and you bring in the resources that you need to execute these strategies and the plans.
Now, how does an 18-year-old that's in Eastern Europe, what drives you to be able to do the business? Because it seems like coming from Canada at 17, starting a business, what did you do? I mean, how did you integrate into the culture?
Uh, I guess I just somehow had a personality that more easily integrated into that type of culture. I guess I am a natural risk taker. And for that reason, I took risks and managed to work it out when other people probably would have run screaming from the room in some of the situations that
Like
can
what
come
kind
up.
of situations, Ronnie? What kind of situation would come
Well,
you had to deal with? What would be like that? What would make somebody else scream that as an entrepreneur you had to overcome?
just very complicated risks, regulatory problems, um, difficulties with tax authorities, for example, when you're dealing with environments that have very complicated and different tax structures, um, dealing with people who just have very different cultures and personalities, corruption problems. I remember sitting in a meeting room of one very large government controlled entity, and we were discussing a project. And while we were discussing the project, the guy was writing down on a piece of paper, because he knew, I guess, that the room was somehow being recorded, the audio. He was writing down on a piece of paper and trying to push us to pay him some, uh, let's call them consulting fees, for supporting us in the organization.
And how do you
So,
deal
of,
with those
of
kind of guys? How do you keep them, push them away so you don't have to do it?
Well, you just basically have to say no. And in that case, in some cases, you have to understand that you're not going to do business there, because
Hmm.
very often in that organization, and that's why I would say, in some of the countries where I worked, some of our competition grew very fast and we grew much slower. And I think part of that was because we didn't engage in practices like that that allowed the competition to grow very fast. And it's a decision you have to make.
So how do you deal with it? So when you're in a foreign country like that, and there are a lot of other people, expats there, how did you integrate with those expats? How close do the expats come to you?
Well, actually, being an expat this in that type of economy at that time was a benefit, because um, there was a lot of foreign direct investment. And when you have large foreign investors coming in, they tend to bring in um, some expat management to oversee the investments and the development of those companies. And so, uh, being an expat, in some cases allowed me to very quickly build relationships with top management at those companies that were making investments, and that was a way to build the business. So
That's
the
and so you built.
personal relationships at the end of the day drive every business.
So you
Even a
had the personal
retail
relation.
shop, sorry, even a retail shop is driven by personal relations between the sales rep on the floor and the customers that come in, personal relations between the buyers and the vendors who supply the shop, personal relationships with the landlord, for example. At the end of the day, personal relationships is one of the building personal and maintaining personal relationships is one of the most important skills that any entrepreneur should have.
So when you're building those personal relationships with those folks, so do they become? Do you become tightly knit in the community?
Um, yeah, well, it depends on what you want to do and the person you are. In my case, I became a member of the board of directors of American Chamber of Commerce, which was one of the main organizations representing foreign business in the region that I was in. And being on the board of directors allowed me to, number one, participate in activities that were interesting for me, because we were promoting trade and investment, and we were involved in different regulatory problems and working with local governments and foreign governments. And it was actually very interesting, and it gave me a chance to do something that I enjoy. And that's the first thing, of course, that's the first key to success, is be doing something you enjoy. But it also allowed me to build relations even further with some of the other companies in the market, some of the biggest companies and the biggest investors.
And so as you're going down through the journey, there's always a love affair with those countries as it's growing. What happens when it starts to go south and the relationships start to go south a bit? How do you deal with that in terms of your company? Can you feel it when it's going south, and what kind of impact does it have?
Well, I mean, I don't know if you can feel it. I certainly started to feel it. And, there's two sides to this impact. One side of it is the personal side, the effect it has on you if you're living there, and your family, and for example, your children. And if you feel it going the wrong way, if you feel that things are going on that are hard for you to accept at a gut level, then you start to have to think about, am I going to be able to live here in the long term? What do I do? How do I mitigate this? It's a problem, and problems like this are hard to solve. It's not a problem that you can solve very easily by changing the environment. Um, I mean, doing something for the environment to change. The only thing you can do is pick yourself up and move, and that's a reason why. Um, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I moved to Silicon Valley to expand the business into the US. And because in part, I wanted my children growing up in a environment that I felt more comfortable with. Um, and then there's the business side of the changing environment. And if you're fine on a personal level with the changing environment, then there's a question about the business side of the changing environment. And in some cases, the changing environment changes bring risk, problems, and opportunities. And so for the right people who have the possibility to recognize the opportunities and to realize the benefit of those opportunities, then there is lots of possibility to build the business. And if again, if you're doing something you love, that makes a lot of sense. And so certainly a lot of people who were working in my industry um, realized that there was the possibility, even in the changing environment, and are making good money there. And there were a lot of people who didn't like what was going on and left the environment. In my case, um, I sold the company. I exited the company and sold the company to people who were more comfortable working in that environment.
So as you go down through, you started the company. How do you find those first investors that can help you grow the company?
Um, well, uh, that's the whole book and the whole lecture in itself about how do you raise money. And it depends a lot on where you are and where you're coming from and where you're going. There's no standard simple answer. There are 1,000 different answers and ways of going through it. Um, it's about, first of all, having a good business plan and being able to show that you are executing that business plan, being already on the way, not simply having an idea, but being successful in executing that idea, in building the business, and being able to show to people who have money, who have resources, that they can trust you, they can have confidence in you to make the business successful. And then it's about having the contacts with those people, because those people are difficult to get to, and there are, besides yourself, 10,000 other people trying to reach those same people. So you have to be networking, you have to know the people with the right contacts to reach the people. You have to know the right people to reach, because different people out there have different investment philosophies, which may or may not align with your business. There has to be a good character and personality fit. You have to get along with those people. They have to, again, trust you and have confidence in you and enjoy working with you. Enjoying, again, you have to like what you're doing, and those people have to like what they're doing with you. And so all of those things have to come together. And if it comes together, there's a world of possibility, because those people, they have money and they want to do something with that money. They want to put that money to work in the environment and with the people that they enjoy working with, and that they have confidence will make that money work and not lose that money. So um, in my case, I met a woman called Esther Dyson, and we got along. And I believe She had confidence in me and she invested in me, and over time she invested more. In some cases, we had to ask her for more because we needed that, but eventually it paid off for her. Um, and she made money on the investment. Um, it wasn't we weren't a unicorn. We didn't make a huge amount of money, but she definitely came out positive over time, and um, that's a lot better than a lot of other investments that fail. So I don't want to make it sound too bad. I think we did a good job, and we avoided a lot of pitfalls on the road, and made her some money. And I still have a good relationship with her.
And how integrated was she in the business?
She wasn't integrated in the business. I mean, when she came to town, we would sit down. When I had a problem that I could use her help on, her advice on, I could call her. And she was basically an angel investor. And an angel investor is very different from an established venture capital firm that has a lot of systems to support their investments. In her case, it was very ad hoc and unstructured, but that worked well in our case. That when I needed to, I could call her, we could meet, and she was able to make introductions when we needed it. And so it was a good relationship. Other types of investors would have a more structured approach, and they would have, for example, the committee that would be dealing with your company. They would have seats on the board of directors. She in theory, had a seat on the board of directors, but the board of directors was a very informal part of the organization. For a lot of other investors and venture capital companies, they would insist on a highly formalized board of directors, depending on the size of investment.
Interesting. So you went down through that. She was happy. So how do you determine it's time to sell the company? What made you determine it's time? So you start the company. What's the time that you said it's time to sell it? What made you make that decision?
Uh, well, that's a funny question because at the time I really wasn't sure. I had built the company for many years. There were people that we were negotiating with. We had an offer. I wasn't sure about it, and so I spoke to some people I trust, including you, and they said, "You know what? Probably it's time to sell." And my instinct was that it was probably time to sell also. And it turned out to be the right instinct because in the region things got a lot worse. And had I waited, I probably would have been in a worse place for being able to sell the business. So it turned out that, despite the fact that the offer wasn't as good as really I had hoped it would be, and, maybe they never are. Maybe it's rare, I think, when people go like come with an offer that's really much better than you expect. Um, but it's maybe luck, maybe instinct, good advisors, a combination of that.
And so what's the
There's no magic formula.
so you're essentially you wound down from that. So what's next?
That's a very good question. I'm looking at a few different options now. One of the options is to become a consultant or advisor to businesses, technology, innovation startups. Another option is to work with some friends on some AI projects. So over the recent time, I've been um, studying about AI and looking at AI and doing some research on AI. And I really believe in the potential of AI, both as a business and a way to help people in their day to day lives and help maybe, if it doesn't sound too grandiose, to help humanity in general. And I would like to be involved in that. So, um, ideally, maybe doing all these things together. Um, other opportunities working for some type of large technology vendor because I have so much experience in that industry. I'm looking at different options now, and I'll decide something soon.
Now, do you get bored when you after you've run a company like that and you're out? Do you get bored?
I don't know about bored. I mean, now I have a little bit more time to play with stuff that I've wanted to spend a little time on for a while. And as I mentioned, I've been spending a lot of time on AI recently. So this gives me a little bit of a pause to bring myself up to speed to kind of come up for air, because when you're running a company like that, you have a lot of adrenaline and everything is going on, you're dealing with things every day, but you can lose sight of the big picture. You can lose sight of what is happening at the global scale and where technology is going, and be so involved in the day-to-day tactical questions of running the business that um, maybe it's 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 bad that you can't understand where things are really going. And so um, I wouldn't call it bored. I would call it the opportunity to refocus.
No, that's great. We're coming to the top of the show. Closing thoughts and how do people get a hold of you?
Again, I'd like to thank you for inviting me on the show. I hope that my what I've said, although in a general sense, what I've said is very general, and probably people are thinking, okay, there are no secrets here. I don't think I've said anything new, but I hope that I've had a chance to reinforce maybe what people were thinking themselves, or have people give people a chance to ask themselves their questions. If anybody would like to get in touch with me, um, feel free to drop me an email. My email is very simple: ron at lewins, with an S on the end, .email. Ron at lewins .email. Drop me an email. I will be glad to talk. If anybody has any interest in discussing ventures or just wants a piece of advice, um, I will be glad to help. I'm always interested to help people and to have a chance to interact with people and give them um, some of my, in some cases, useful, in some cases, maybe not useful, but that's up to them to decide, advice.
That sounds great, Ronnie. Well, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule today. It's appreciated. And thanks to all my audience for joining one more time. GSD presents Silicon Valley AI and Tech. And my name is Gary Fowler, and I'm your host. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. And I'll be back to you again next Tuesday with another exciting edition. Take care, Ronnie.
Woo!
Take care, everybody. Bye bye.